Hey guys, welcome back. Me and Paul were just chatting backstage. Thank you guys so much for today. I'm excited for this next session. We're trying to get back on track with the calendar because I know some people have other commitments and stuff like that, so we're doing our best. But this next session I'm excited about because now we dive into a little bit more practicality of everything that we've kind of talked about. And some of these things have actually been discussed at a high level. So we'll be covering active and passive exercises or activities for your daily well-being and for your mental health and your mindfulness and whatever the case may be. Sara Auster is here. Well, she's about to join in. Sara always has a crazy, amazing hat on, so I'm excited for her vibe. But with no further ado, I'll turn it over to the guy, Paul Singleton III. He is a acupuncturist. He's an artist, a working and teaching artist. He is a meditation teacher and a bunch of other things. Oh, and he's an art therapist, more importantly. So Paul has a great perspective, and he'll take you guys through everything that he has here for practices. So welcome, Paul Singleton, to the stage. Thank you, Paul.
Awesome. Thank you, Asia Creative, for having me. Thank you, Ian, for inviting me and having me on. Happy to be here, happy to share and to dialogue with everybody that's here. Map your creativity and really set up the right conditions for your creativity, for your creative mind to flourish. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about in brief, and setting up an exercise that you can do to do that. So this is something I do as an art therapist with clients, and I just wanted to offer it here, specifically geared towards creative audience. Great. So we were going into setting up the conditions for your creative mind to flourish. And so what we were talking about is mapping where you are in relationship to the flow state, or being anywhere on a ladder. And so I was saying at the beginning that this is something that I adapted from polyvagal theory, which is talking about the different states of our neurobiology and where we are, we can go from places at the bottom of a ladder, so to speak, where we're, in a place where we don't have the capacity to really do much, where we're feeling overburdened and overwhelmed, and to the place where we feel more activated and we're responding to things in a way that can either move us up or down that ladder. So that would be the challenge section in the middle. And then the top of our ladder is going to be our flow state, when we're really in tune with the work that we're making and really just in the flow and making things. So next slide, please. So what I was saying before is that what you want is a sheet of paper and landscape, and you want to have like 3 different colors of markers or pens for the 3 different states, 3 different places where you might be on this ladder. So take a moment to first draw your ladder on the left-hand side. Thank you all for rolling with these technical difficulties. And it doesn't have to look amazing. It's just the form of a ladder. So we started off with the challenges section in the middle. Again, just reiterating how challenges can be the things that inspire us. Like we make work because we see a challenge and we're thinking about how can we work with it. So challenges can move us up the ladder or they can move us down the ladder. So just the way we were working with this was to get a sense, like an embodied sense of what it feels for you when faced with a challenge. And just using one color right around that middle area, the challenge area, to the far right, and all that space in the right. When I'm faced with challenges, I feel blank, and just popcorn. Whatever comes to mind. and not really staying with that sensation too much, but we want to get a flavor of what it feels like so that we're able to map it. One thing I wanted to present also is that we have our comfort zone. Outside of that, we have our risk zone. So we step out of our comfort zone into the risk zone. And if we go too far into the risk zone, then we come up into the challenge zone. But the more we do that, the more we expand our comfort zone and are able to grow from experiences that feel challenging. Okay, so now we want to move down the ladder to the bottom, burnout. Take a second to think of a time when you felt like, oh, you completely out of capacity to do anything. You couldn't think of approaching making work. You couldn't even think of work, much less go through the act of making and doing. So just touch on with to get a flavor, like a sense of what it's like when you're in that place. When I feel burnout, I feel blank. And use all of that space on the right in a different color to take note of what that feels like. And again, we don't want to dwell there. We just want to get a sense of what it's really like for you so that you're able to map it. Now, take a few deep breaths to clear that energy out. Come back to your seat. Ground where you are. Check in and come back to the present. Excuse me. Now, think of what it's like to be in the state of flow, when you're at your creative peak, when things are just moving as they should. What is that like? In a different color. Put that on the map. Any words, sensations. When you are in the flow, I feel blank. Something I was saying before, and I don't know if that came across when we were having our audio problems, was to pay particular attention to your relationship to sleep, to food, and to any substances in each of these stages or steps along the ladder. That's important information for being able to map where you are. And so an additional thing you can do is to, on the rungs of the ladder, think of one thing that can shift to bring you one step up from burnout into the middle, mobilized state of where you're able to meet challenges. And then on the rungs of the ladder between challenges and flow, what is one thing that you can shift to bring you up and rise above the challenge? so that you're really able to be aligned and in the flow. So this is a brief way of using this mapping technique to check in and find out visually where you are in terms of what you have capacity for, what you're feeling, and just to have a realistic assessment of really giving your creative mind the things that you need in order to flourish and bring out the work that that most represents you. I don't know how much time I have left, but that was the gist of what I wanted to say in terms of a practice. Okay, great. Ashley.
Thank you, Paul.
Oh,
no, go ahead. Coronavirus traveling was my way to be in the flow. I like that, Ashley. Paul, do you have anything else as far as like the practices of your portion of the segment?
You know what? I don't know if I was speeding through and not giving folks enough time to write down. But I was thinking about how much time, and I wanted to give other speakers a chance to, I wanted to respect the time because I know we're running behind schedule and things like that. So
sure. Yeah.
I didn't want to go too long.
Yeah. KD, can we bring in Sara, the wonderful Sara Auster, just as we thought about it like that, Paul, as far as like mapping out creative practices or mapping out your how you're feeling through a creative practice. As I looked through it, I didn't know what to expect seeing that diagram, but I loved it as far as like thinking about how we're able to not only identify how you feel, but then to let me just look at some of the other things you just kind of put for your flow and your burnout, right? Being able to identify and recognize those things, I think, is important. And what we wanted to do here is have, Paul is like I said, a trained art therapist, or is that registered art therapist, working artist as well. And then somebody like a Sara, whenever we're able to bring her in, I know she's here. Sara as well is also an artist, but just kind of talking about that sort of flow to your challenges, to your burnout. I think mapping, that's a great exercise I think we can all kind of do on a regular basis, to map how we feel, but then also like put that in touch with our creativity. KD, can we bring Sara in?
I'm gonna plug in my computer. I see my battery's about to die. I'll be right back.
Okay. Sara Auster. Okay, so Sara's joining now. She'll be up in a couple of seconds. So you guys are seeing things. There she is.
What?
What? How does it look like you're in like a loft in LA and it just like looks amazing?
Is it real though? Is
any of this real?
Are you here?
Thank you so much for your time, Sara. Did you get an opportunity? I know we had some tech difficulties. I think Age of the Creative got knocked off, and so I heard everything Paul was doing the first time, but some people didn't. Were you able to go through the exercise?
Yes, I got it. I caught the second time around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I was just saying, like, I thought that him mapping out how you feel and just kind of being present in the moment and everything like that, from like flow challenges to what was the last one? Burnout, is a great sort of mindful exercise to think about as an artist. So I just wanted to kind of initially get your feedback on that first, and then kind of go into more collective discussion around, other practices that we can do to help our wellness and our mental health as creatives.
Yeah, Paul, I love that exercise, really a lot. So thank you for sharing that. Something that I always believe is that where your attention goes, then your energy follows. And so that very visceral feeling of recalling a time that was painful, and then you can actually go there just by bringing your attention there and revisit that painful time. And equally, you can, recall this joyful moment or this moment when you're in the flow, and then you're able to tap into that feeling physically too. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, thank you. And what did they call that, Paul? Paul and I are in a program together. I think I told you about yesterday, Sara. So we call it emotion tones or tone feelings.
Feeling tones.
Feeling tones. There we go. I knew Sara would know it too, but yeah. That when you were saying that, Sara, that's what triggered me as far as feeling tone. I have challenges at times. I try to stay so present that I have challenges at times, like going back to revisit how I felt in certain moments. Unless it's something that's a very huge moment when I know that I felt like rage or anger or whatever the case may be for that. So when you said that triggered the feeling tone sort of vibe, which is a very challenging exercise to go through, but it seems like it resonated for everybody, which I think is amazing.
Yeah. And I think that something that many of us can get caught up in is how we want things to look. I mean, especially creative people, it's like, yes, vision your dream job, vision a perfect world, vision, a healing of the planet. But if you don't know how it feels, then it's difficult to take the steps to get there, because I believe in my half of my life, probably hopefully lived, that, anytime I've gotten something, it never looked how I thought it was going to look. But it had the feeling of what I wanted. But it doesn't manifest, visually like that, and that's where I think feeling tone comes in. And being able to do that exercise like that Paul led us through is really helpful to say, like, what is the feeling, and not getting caught up on the visuals and the details, and trying to get everything just right.
Yeah, I think as you put that, right, like I guess when we thought about putting this together, specifically this session, you think about like just activities and exercises you can do. I guess I never thought about it being like tapping into the feelings, even though that is something that comes with just being mindful, right? But I think you kind of just framed it in a different sort of way, that from a vulnerability perspective, it kind of tags on to a little bit of what we talked about at the end of the last section in vulnerability. But it makes you think about it in a different way. And I want to transition just a smidge and think about, right, that exercise, and even like some of the work that you do, Sara, right? So you're a creative, you're an artist, but then you're also a meditation teacher, and then you're also an author recently, and you're also a sound practitioner, right? If that's the right way to say it. So thinking about that, right, and just kind of like going back to the feeling tones that you just mentioned, what have you found as you kind of first started your artist and creative journey? What exercises did you find to kind of help you on your wellness? Like, when did you actually start your wellness journey, your wellness path, and how did you navigate to find things that could work for you as far as your daily well-being and to kind of elevate your mental
health? Well, how long of a version can I give you? I mean, I think that we usually only wake up to the work that we have to do that needs to be done when we feel pain. And at that point, if you're looking at, traditional Chinese medicine or something like that, at that point, the root cause has already been there for a long time. And I think for myself, when I was 23 years old, I broke my back. I had a really traumatic accident. I was already working as an artist. I thought I was, this elevated creature that was offering, my visions into the world. And then I broke my back in 4 places, and I was in chronic pain, and I felt like, well, I can't make art anymore because I need to get out of pain. But that moment was a moment that set me off on a different path towards self-discovery, first through the physical, through the chemical, and then through the emotional. Because it wasn't until much later on that I started to see the connection. Yeah.
Okay. And so how did that lead you to saying, right? Like, did you have a sound experience first that kind of, like, how did you actually get into saying, like, I want to help people in their well-being and heal through that?
So,
and even like same question for you, Paul, because Paul does, as an art therapist, he did an amazing, he does origami as one of his sort of mindful practices. And it's really dope. He did one yesterday to do these origamic lilies, I think they were. I don't know if I'm saying it right, Paul.
Yeah.
But like, that's a question for both of you. So how did you kind of transition into, how did you get put on to sound healing? And then how did you transition to teaching? And same thing for you, Paul. No, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh. Well, Paul, I'm a new fan of your work. I really love it. Yeah, thank you. And I think I get asked this question a lot, and I think generally people want like a short answer or some magical answer, like a Spider-Man got bit by a spider, like a singing bowl fell on my head, and I was like, oh my God, singing bowls, sound healing. It wasn't a revelatory moment like that at all. Through needing to recover from my injury, I ultimately found different practices. I came to practice yoga. I became a student of yoga. I did many teacher trainings in asana and meditation without the intention of being a teacher or a guide. In fact, I would ask my teachers, like, if I do this, do I have to teach? Because
Right.
I don't want to teach. I'm not a teacher. I'm not trying to preach anything to anybody. I just want to know. I've always been a seeker and a student. And so, that's always been my journey. And so what I do now has been a slow weaving of everything I've always done. I take a new thread and I weave it into the fabric of what I'm doing. And that's why I'm sure you both can relate is, it's difficult to say I am blank one title, or give it to me in 3. You get 3, because we're all, human people exploring different facets of ourselves, and then hopefully, ultimately, pulling them all together to be one whole person in the world.
Yeah. Paul?
Yeah, I could definitely pick up on that last point that you just made, Sarah, in terms of having to feel like I needed like a professional title and still existing as an artist, and like having this need within me to create and to make. And so I used to really like this show on Comedy Central called Dr. Katz, Professional Therapist. And so it was this animated thing where basically the whole premise of the show was stand-up comedians would come on and they would be like the patient, and he would like ask them about their lives, and they would tell these funny stories that were just, comedy bits, but that's what like got me thinking, oh, I could do that. I could be a therapist. And so many years later in art school, I'm like in a art education program, and I had this teacher, this professor who was like, well, there's also this thing called art therapy. And so like my ears kind of pricked up, like I hadn't even heard of this as a concept, and so I went through education program and still felt like called to do this other thing, like this therapy thing. So I like was taking psychology courses and minored in psych. I went to VCU in Richmond, Virginia, which is a pretty good art school. And
very good art school.
Yeah, at the time, I felt like I got access to really good, like really quality, program with really good facilities and everything like that. And so I moved to New York City to do the whole art therapy grad school thing. Like I kind of like waited and I was like, oh, I don't know, and but then like spending years as this is my thing, I'm an art therapist, there was still that artist part of me that was like, but what about me? I'm not getting fed over here. And I've definitely been in places where I was, I can recall being extremely burnt out, in terms of like giving my all to supporting others as an art therapist and neglecting myself at the same time. So I know that there's got to be a balance. And so like I'm only now, as you were saying, Sara, like kind of like integrating these different hats that I wear and different aspects of myself, into just one offering into the world.
That's beautiful. Sara said something to like Paul, when we have classes, Sara said something that made my ears prick up, right? Like I got into like the teacher training. I was like, yeah, I don't want to be a teacher, but how can I I ask that same kind of question in different ways, like every time. But sometimes you just have to just kind of like lean into it because there is like possibility into like the unknown, if you will, right? Thinking about like, I think your guys' practices are different, right? At the end of the day, it's both healing, and they're both, in my opinion, and they are, I think, more broadly too, creative ways of being mindful, creative ways of healing. And I love how both of you guys have intertwined your art into that. And for Sara, right, I don't know what type of art you practiced before the injury, but like that might, sound practice, like that might be a new lane that you went down. But thinking about that, right, and thinking about like creatives and the people that are here, first of all, give gratitude to them for investing in their wellness and their mental health and their well-being. Thinking about that now, getting a little practical into it, what are practices, like Paul's exercise was great. Me and Paul did an IG live of leading through being present. And then Paul did a quick origami exercise, which was beautiful. I messed it up. But what are like different things, whether it is your sound bath, whether it is your origami, right? Whether it is doing a meditation, how can creatives and artists explore a practice like that works for them? What are resources that are available to do that? Obviously, you guys both having your own resources, but what are things, where can they kind of start that journey and to search to find out what will work for them, whether it's yoga or whatever the case may be?
Okay.
It's open to anybody. It's open to anybody.
Where do we begin? I think for me, the art that I was making before my injury was mixed media. I was an installation artist, large scale prints and sound and smells. And so I was, in a way, creating experiences and environments for people, which is not different from what I do now. So as I was saying before, like one thing builds onto the other. And through my healing process, at the beginning, I mostly hated everything that I tried. Really. I'm like I say it in the first like few lines of my book, like I'm not a love and light person. I'm not a woo-woo person. I'm a born skeptic. Like, you're going to have to like really sell this to me. Like I'm
great. I don't get none of those vibes. My first time I never got those vibes from you. But hey, that's so good to know.
But that's my entry point. And so as I went into these studios and ashrams and temples, and I would just be like, wow, the meat of this is so good. But the way that it's being delivered is hard for someone like me to digest. Like maybe the language was too flowery, or I was always at first turned off by chanting, or what does this mean? I don't know what it means. I'm not doing it because it's religious or something like that. Right. And so I just kind of forced myself to go back again and again. And I think that's where so many people kind of drop off is like, how many people say, oh, meditation, I tried that. No, I can't do it. It's like, how many times did you try it? 1 time? 3 times? Not enough.
There's beauty in what you just said. You said you kept going back again. And that's a misnomer in meditation. People think you have to sit there and be quiet and that all this like this.
Right.
And so what it is recognizing that your mind has drifted or that you're whatever, and you come back to noticing, right? And so I'll let you just go from there. But I think that that's like a misnomer about the practice of meditation when people are like, oh, I tried it, it didn't work for me. And it doesn't work for everybody, but there's different ways and modalities. I think sound baths obviously is one of those modalities. But
it's interesting. I just want to say one more thing before I lose it. But repetition creates recognition, and that is something that like a lot of brand marketing people say, but it's true for spiritual practice, for health and wellness practice. And, you're not going to suddenly have this magical, beautiful spiritual ritual. It's more that routine becomes ritual, and then the ritual becomes sacred. It's like you got to keep coming back. Transformation, we're not getting a quick fix here. Anyway.
Thank you. I would just like to introduce a quote here that I picked up and reading recently from Rahuf Harfouche. And so Rahuf has a book called Hustle and Float. And so I was reading this interview, and she says, recovery is as valuable as your work. So your recovery is as valuable as your work. So I think there's this language that goes around a lot now about self-care and that sort of thing, and I think that can be a way of shifting attention away from the things that systematically might be causing burnout in the first place, by focusing on self-care, but at the same time, it's like, it's very important to really give time and space for recovery and for caring for yourself. I think that's for me, I'm starting to uncover the ways in which I guess through my, experiences and social conditioning and everything, kind of like ignore or push aside, subtle signals that are in me, the things that need my attention, and I think a lot of times we kind of like push things to the side and we're just pushing ahead, plugging ahead, and ignoring things. And so I think mindfulness and it's about growing our awareness of what's happening, and so and not just kind of, because the opposite of mindful is mindless, right? So we're not like mindlessly going about and doing things.
Yeah, I want to open it up to questions, but before we do, just because and Jessica has been so engaged, so thank you, Jessica. Before we do, I think, right, there's Christina Paul. Christina's one of our classmates, Sara. And so Christina and I did another live on World Meditation Day or whatever day that was last week. And she kind of just broke down, similar to kind of what Paul said, just four small things that you can kind of do to integrate a meditation practice into your day to day. And it can only be it could be as short as 3 minutes or 2 minutes, whatever the case may be. Paul's second page of his thing, set up your conditions for your creative mind to flourish, is like one of those things, right? So finding a space, finding a time that works for you. What are just like two, I think both of your practices are different, right? We all are kind of even in the space of like meditation and mindfulness, right? But what are just quick, like sort of easy things that if somebody in this session doesn't have a wellness practice, whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation, whether it's drawing, like, coloring, painting, drawing, writing music, free writing, whatever the case may be, what are just like easy things that they can do on a day-to-day basis to kind of try to discover that, or then maybe even follow you guys on IG or wherever your pages are, right? To maybe tune in for a sound bath or to come and do an origami session or whatever the case may be. Outside of those things, what are 2 or 3 things that they could kind of do easily to integrate a mindful practice into their day-to-day?
Well, first thing I would say is to do the things that you are doing on your day-to-day with awareness and mindfulness. And so like one thing that I learned like early in life through from Thich Nhat Hanh was about washing dishes as a meditation practice, And so when you're fully there and you're washing dishes with a specific intention, you're not just mindlessly doing this or doing it just to get it over with, but you have intentionality. I think that's important. And so whether you're folding origami or you're washing dishes, it's the I guess the purity of your intention.
Yeah.
I mean, make it digestible. If it's something that you're gonna try and do consistently, then it should be something that that's actually achievable. So I say to people like, oh, I can't meditate for 30 minutes. I can't sit still. I can't, then set a timer for 1 minute and know that like that container is so small. You can't sit for 1 minute and then, do that for a few days and you'll realize well, that's really short, and then you up it to 2 minutes, and then you add 3 and then maybe it's 5 because it becomes something that you like to do. Like what I said, before about that routine becomes a ritual. It becomes like, hygiene. And we say that a lot, like you wouldn't leave the house without brushing your teeth, and meditation is mental hygiene. I don't, it's just part of what I do in the morning. It's my hygiene. I would not do it.
I love that. It's my hygiene. That's beautiful.
That's
beautiful.
Hearing you say that, it's almost like wearing a mask, like you do it for other people.
Don't come near me if I haven't meditated yet in the morning. That's my husband. He'll tell you.
I feel the same exact way. It's like, I'm looking at my phone, but it's part of my practice. It's looking at it's things that I read that are digital, but I'm not waking up and looking at Instagram or, looking at my email, other things like that. Like as I've kind of furthered my practice as a creative and as a creative business person, my morning practice has gotten longer and longer. So I try to wake up earlier because it's like, this might take me 2 hours, before I can feel comfortable to either interact with somebody else or just kind of move on with my day. I want to open it up to questions. Jessica has just been interacting on an amazing level. If anybody has questions, feel free to shoot them here. I'll just ask another one. What's your favorite sort of practice not as a teacher or practitioner, to both of you? What is your favorite sort of thing to do to be mindful? You talked about washing dishes, Paul. That's a great thing. Renee just says cooking will be meditative too, observing food, being grateful for it before eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smell it. Look at it. Take a moment.
Yeah. What are your guys' things, Paul? I mean, dishes, food, what else?
Being in nature. I like to go for walks, and if I can, take my shoes off and be in the grass barefoot.
Yeah. I mean, I think there was a term that used to really annoy me from the yoga community. It's like yoga on and off the mat. Like a lot of yoga teachers would say that, like, you got to keep your yoga off the mat. And I'm like, what? But it's basically, and I get it. And again, I wouldn't say it that way, but it's like, how you do anything is how you do everything. And that's it. How you wash the dishes, how you talk to the cashier who's checking you out at the store, how, it's just how you do everything. So if you have a meditative practice, or you have a practice where, in my case, I'm helping people to recognize listening as a practice. We hone that skill of meditation, of listening, of inner listening, then you have this almost, I call it like a superpower, where you can pause before you react.
Yep.
In every single moment, it's like a nanosecond. You're like, am I making a choice here that is, benefiting the well-being of myself and others? Or am I making a choice that is going against the well-being of myself and others? I think there's really only, it's like, is this going to be beneficial? Am I like supporting this interaction? And so, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Typing in the corner.
Yeah. Any other questions anybody has, or anything else you guys want to cover as far as practices are concerned, adopting a new practice, how creatives can kind of get into to keeping their mind and their mental sharp?
Can I say one more thing? Something about the conditions, which is something that I love and also, share a lot, because people put a lot of pressure, on themselves. And an analogy that I love that I've heard a long time ago is that you wouldn't like yell at a plant to grow. That's not how plants grow. You give them sunlight and you give them water, and it's the right amounts, and you're not over watering, and you're not, putting it out in the sun. But that's like an example that I think people really understand. It's like, oh, I need to be gentle with myself. I need to take this one step at a time. And maybe if I set up a little beautiful space in my apartment, then I'll want to go to there in the morning to sit quietly, so I love that, bringing up the conditions.
Beautiful. I love that. I couldn't say it any better myself.
Perfect. Ashley's still here out in LA. Thank you. Blessy Hubbard. Such a great candid conversation here, Paul, Sara, and Ian. Thanks for sharing your practices and insight. Buying my first plant soon in my new apartment. Yay. Okay. Ashley,
that's a good way to be accountable.
Okay. Stopping several times during the day and appreciating the day by saying, example, for today. Today is only May 31st, 2020. There will ever, I think that meant to be never be, and so forth each day. Oh, there will ever be. Look around and appreciate what you see wherever you are. Really, that's beautiful. Thank you.
I mean, that's what makes things sacred, right? It's special. It's happening now. This conversation, it's happening now. I mean, we wouldn't be able to watch it later, but the energy of all of us being like together at the same time,
that's why I love this platform. I was adamant about not doing Zoom, because this gives us, although we can't bring other people in, as far like they do get a chance to interact with you in the sessions and stuff like that. But that's why I was adamant about doing this on Hopin. I had another experience on Hopin, and Creative Vibes Only is an in real life experience, and I wanted to try to replicate that as much as I could. But again, be tangible and resourceful to people. It's great that we're having conversation, but that's why I'm asking you questions. How can they integrate these tools? Conversations only inspire so much. How can we help somebody in their path and their journey to wellness, and specifically right now, ending Mental Health Awareness Month, mental health as well. So I'm so grateful for you. Any parting words, Sara, Paul? I know Paul is at Joyful Brave. When's the next origami? Like, what's happening? Let us know what you guys have in the queue. Sara's actually going to be leading a demo later too, so we'll get into that. But where can they find you, Paul, and what do you have on tap?
Yeah, I'm available for sessions this afternoon. After this, if you want to check in one-on-one. So I have I think I can like exchange cards with people and give you my contact info if you want to connect later. But yeah, I'm around. I'm not hard to find, so I'm like all over the internets. But yeah, I hope that, I just wanted to say that I hope this mapping tool is something that folks can actually use, that it's a helpful, practical tool that they can use in their everyday life.
Okay. And you're at Joyful Brave, right, Paul?
Yeah, that's me on Instagram. Check me out on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I don't really tweet like that, but I'm on there too.
Sara, where do you have in the pipeline?
Sometimes you just have to pick one.
Somebody mentioned earlier you do sound bath Tuesdays and Thursdays. So let us know what you have, where they can catch you, find you.
Yes, I am Sara Auster, the person, SaraAuster. It is also how you can find me anywhere else on the internet, SaraAuster.com, at Sara Auster on Instagram. I also have Twitter, but don't go there. There's nothing there. But yeah, I've been hosting IG live sound baths, calling them at-home sound baths since March 14th, 3 times a week. Twice a week I do that on my own. And then once a week, my partner joins me on Saturdays. I just like to put out there that my book is a really great resource for step-by-step practices. There's 15 chapters in the book, and at the end of each chapter, there's a step-by-step practice that you can do on your own. It's also available as an audiobook. So for many of those practices, I'm not just reading step 1, do that. I'm actually guiding you through the practices. So the audiobook is slightly different from the physical book, but definitely a great resource to learn more about sound baths and the practice of mindful listening and deep listening. So.
I came to Sara's book launch party. I haven't been able to dive into it yet, but now I'm excited about that because I'm all about tangibility. So knowing that that's there at the end of each chat, that's amazing for me. So great, thank you. And Sara's going to be in the sessions in a few minutes. Now. She's going to be doing a demo. So what are you demoing so people can go to the sessions before they come back to the stage?
Okay, I'm going to do a few minute deep listening practice.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm so grateful. Everybody leave the stage and go to the sessions. In about 5 minutes, Sara will be doing the deep listening session. Her plug for her book was great. I'm going to now make sure I read it and get it. And so, yeah, thank you, Sara. Thank you, Paul. I'm so grateful. After Sara's session, we'll come back here to the stage for food and nutrition. And after that, supplements. And it's the end of the day. I know we're behind a few minutes, but we're here. We're present. I'm so grateful for you guys. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
All right,
thanks, Paul. See you soon.